Hi everybody, we're here to film a couple of videos to catch you up on what we've been reading in 2022.
That's right.
It's been kind of a wild year in general, so my reading, and I'm not sure about Mackie's, but my reading has been like all over the place. Like it's been up and down and around town, and also non-existent for a little while.
But we're here.
Still managed to read a lot of things. So we have a lot of things to talk about. So we're going to do things a little bit differently, or at least try doing things a little bit differently, just to give you an overview of everything.
Yeah, so short, sweet, and rapid fire-ish.
We've gone back
on the
to, for this at least, we're going to go back to doing the monthly. So we're just going to talk about what we read every single month in a different video. So today, of course, we're starting with January 2022 and we read.
This is the January what we read.
I don't think we actually I don't think we actually decided who was going first.
I am going first, and then I shall pause, and then she'll be you. Because I usually start with some of the stuff that I did read, and I was like, all right, this is nice, but then it doesn't exactly wind up on my actual, oh my god, this is going to be like cool. So there was a Harry Potter reread at one point in time. I believe it was.
Oh, I didn't know you also reread it.
Yes, I did, but mine was more Chamber of Secrets.
Oh yes.
So because that's always a fun book. The only thing I want to say about that, for those of you who haven't read Harry Potter, is main character is a sass bucket. Harry Potter. You think he's just some like little orphan boy, but he's actually pretty sassy.
Now might be a good time to throw in the fact that I also reread Harry Potter. I think in January in particular, I reread Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Fair.
I was feeling nostalgic. I was also kind of going through a lot of work stuff already in January, so I needed. Or I just felt drawn to something that was familiar, something that made me feel a little bit like I was returning to my childhood again, so that's why I picked up Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
And who doesn't love discovering magic?
If only in real life I had some.
Right. In the spirit of rereads, and in an incredibly violent shift in turn, quite literally, I reread Garth Ennis's Jennifer Blood. So it's Garth Ennis, so obviously there's going to be a lot of, just the body count is so high and the violence is gratuitous.
So what's it about?
It is about a lady who was retired to the suburbs with her family and her husband and children. And she was also formerly the mafia's hit woman at one point, or some such kind of former life as a wet works agent, whether, I don't think she's government, I forget at this point in time.
Okay.
But then something happens that pisses her off, and she just realizes, well, I guess I have to kill everyone again. And she does.
Got the skills to back it up.
And she does make that attempt, or at least that's what the plot of Jennifer Blood actually was and is. And I really, really loved it. It's a great read to sort of like focus on if you just want like mindless violence, which who doesn't appreciate that every so often in their media
consumption.
Yeah, I mean, John Wick, anybody? So there's that. So those are my sort of like a couple of rereads that are worth sort of like mentioning. I hand the floor to you for your slew of...
Well, I'm gonna do almost the same thing in that I'll talk about the books that I read, like some of them I enjoyed, some of them I didn't enjoy as much. We'll save the ones that I really feel like I need to talk about for the end, which I think you also have some. One of the first things that I read this year was the Anthropocene Reviewed, which is by John Green. It's a collection of essays that he's written about a couple of different topics. I actually think there's a podcast that exists, so I think the podcast predated the collection of essays. Either way, it's a really interesting and eclectic collection because it's like about a bunch of random topics. Like it's so random. Like Dr. Pepper is one of the topics. The song Auld Lang Syne is one of the topics. There's like a whole bunch of things in that book. And while I didn't necessarily love every single essay, I thought it was really interesting just to get John Green's perspective on all of these things. So it's his opinion on these things and his sort of like what he's learned over the years, but it's also him gathering some facts to share with you. I said, oh, I just remembered the Piggly Wiggly is actually another topic.
And who doesn't love the Piggly Wiggly?
An academic decathlon. See, I'm like remembering random things. What really struck me the most, I guess, is John Green's voice is very particular, it's very individual, and it really shines in his work. This in particular, because it's really him, in those words and in whatever opinions he's expressing, like you could really feel like you were kind of just chatting with a friend and getting to know all of these like fun facts and stuff. There were definitely a couple of essays that really moved me a lot. I already mentioned Auld Lang Syne. That is actually the essay that made me cry the most. I like it because he was able to capture sort of some of the different feelings that a lot of us have been having ever since the pandemic started. His reflections felt very relatable at times, and I really enjoyed experiencing that. This was also the first read of our family book club this year, and it was a great choice to start the year with.
Actually, yeah.
Then I reread, just quick, I reread The Gilded Wolves, which is by Roshni Chokshi, because I had intended to finish the series, still have not finished the series, and we're now at the end of August. But regardless, The Gilded Wolves is set in Paris in the 1800s, I want to say.
Thereabouts.
And it brings together a group of very talented and very unique individuals because they have to perform a sort of heist type thing. In this world, there's also some level of magic involved, and there's this whole historical precedent for that, with some very powerful families, very powerful magic, and things get revealed at the end that remind me that I need to read book 2, so you know, that's life.
There's that.
I also read for the first time a book by Rebecca Ross, that's A River Enchanted. This is a very quiet adult fantasy. It's very character driven. It's about an individual named Jack. He's technically a bard type character. Like he's literally a bard in the book. And he left his island home to go away and study music, but he's being called back because girls are disappearing on the island, and it seems like he's going to have a particular role to play in helping the leader of his clan hopefully figure out where all of the missing girls are going. It's really good. It was surprising to me. Like, I thought I would like it. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did.
Right.
Very good read. So excited for the sequel. And then I started rereading Sarah J Maas again, so I reread The Assassin's Blade. I'm always going to enjoy this collection just because it's so fun to see the history of Selena Sardothian and all of these random connections. Well, not random. All of these connections.
There was a random fringing, though. Anyway.
All of the connections she makes in these stories. Like, if you've read the series, you'll know they eventually show up again at some point. And it's so cool just to see that. And every time, even though I know exactly what's gonna happen, I'm still like freaking out and kind of losing it. But I enjoyed rereading The Assassin's Blade, obviously, in case you couldn't tell. And the last book I'm going to mention in this section is Only a Monster, which is by Vanessa Len. It's a debut novel. This is about a girl who has no idea until a certain incident that she is from a family of monsters and is a monster herself. Oh, cool. And it just so happens that the guy she's dating at this point is a monster hunter.
I mean, sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So tragedy strikes, she ends up time traveling. It's a whole thing where she has to figure out who to trust and where to go from here and what to do next, especially given her heritage and the knowledge that there are people who are out to get her and her family.
Right.
It was interesting. It felt weirdly like an old school YA book, even though it just got published this year. I enjoyed it enough. I'm not sure that I'm rushing to pick up the sequel, but it was a fun time. So, you know, check it out if the premise sounds at all interesting to you.
Awesome.
All right, let's move to the exciting stuff, which is the books we really enjoyed.
I'm going to start with Harrow Country by Cullen Bunn. It's a long sort of like series that you'll find on sort of like if you're subscribed to the Comixology Unlimited, that kind of stuff. I want to say it's not too old, but it didn't just like come out last year. Like this has been out for a little bit of time now. It's set in, I want to say, rural America, middle-ish America, of just like vague, somewhere in the middle kind of thing. It centers around a young girl who discovers that she has sort of like powers and that they're tied to the town's terrible history and a particular witch hunt that happened back then and her connection to...
Oh wait, this is starting to come back to me.
Yeah, and so it's a lot of body horror, it's a lot of actual horror, it's a lot of just sort of like creepy crawlies in the woods and spells and incantations and, you know, just... boys without skin. It's a thing, and
boys without skin.
It's and I
How
really
do I feel about that?
It's again very gothic horror. I appreciated the series like pretty much because I, as a child, loved horror movies. That's not something you always hear.
Do you still love horror movies as an adult? I think so, right?
I don't anymore because I sort of outgrew that. So unless there's so for me, unless the horror piece has a really good type of lore. And as a compelling sort of like story, and it's not just monsters are out to kill you or you have to like sever your leg to escape the needles that are coming at your face. I'm not into sort of any of that sort of like torture, you know, porn kind of thing, but I do appreciate those two things. And Harrow Country actually does have really great lore and a really compelling story with a ton of backstory, which is my third secret favorite thing. So,
I think that's what makes a horror.
Yeah.
Anything horror, really. Like, if you have a good set of characters and a good backstory.
And a reason to want to know if they live or not, right? Or
well, you have to care, right?
Have to care. Otherwise, this is just murdering everybody, all right? So there's that. Which leads me to another really cool horror thing that I want. And this is fresh. Like, this is just yummy. Yeah, it's new and it's still ongoing. It's by James Tynion IV, and it's Something is Killing the Children.
Oh, right. The one that's going to get turned into the Netflix show.
Is it? Yes, I think so.
I feel like we talked about this.
I think that we talked about this as well. So, Something's Killing the Children is very, 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 very simple. There's not enough backstory for the actual inhabitants of the town being attacked by the something that is killing the children.
Oh, okay.
That you sort of want to care too much about. It's just, it starts off with a young boy who was accused of murdering his friends.
Okay.
But the friends were like dismembered randomly again.
Can't believe they think that
a
kid did that, but okay.
Right? I mean, it's, of course, it's society. But of course something is killing the children, and an agent of an ancient secret society rolls up into town and tries to take care of the thing. It's just her allegiances are also sort of like tenuous with the secret organization that sent her there.
Sneaky.
So now it is a conflict of interest of, she sees herself in the victim who was whatever, and then this thing is still out there, and then just madness ensues. So I recommend it for anybody who likes a nice, quick-paced, heart-pumping kind of like, oh my gosh, what is the thing? Same thing. What attracts me to horror? Great lore, which I adored. And then a character who, more than Harrow Country, where it's just a little kind of just, okay, so you're all just like living in the sticks and then suddenly something happens. Here it's more like, ooh, but there's a past to this demon hunter type person. The demon hunter, vampire hunter type archetype, whatever, right? It's not a vampire. Not going to spoil you. So highly recommended. Super, super cool. If you like horror and don't balk at the dismemberment of
individuals,
children. Anybody who's watched Demon Slayer would be fine watching this thing.
Obviously, check out content warnings for both of those things.
Right, so there's that. And last but certainly not least, Jonathan Hickman's run with the X-Men. And for those of you who've seen me like geek out and nerd out about Jonathan Hickman for the last year or so with the X-Men having their own island, and they're all like cool now.
Yeah.
Well, they're not cool with the world. It's just the world has to be cool with them. Hickman ends his run. And he ties up so many loose ends, even, and this is the Inferno series. I could not wait for comics, for Marvel Unlimited to print that out, because they just released issue 1, and I'm like, this whole thing is out. I am buying everything. It closes Jonathan Hickman's arc. Everything that he started out in the first one ties off in this next one. I love it because there are panels that really reflect the first few panels in a weird, terrible recapitulation of what is the new normal now. So it cauterizes Hickman's run, and then it moves us to an open world of any new writers can come into the sandbox and just mess with, and they have been, and it's been kind of bananas. So it's a great bookend to an insane concept that ran, I personally think, beautifully. Of course, I'm incredibly biased, so I
love the X-Men, as everyone who watches this channel knows.
I love the X-Men, but I also love this. I mean, I've seen people divided over this, like, we have an island now kind of run, and not just any kind of island.
You've been enjoying it, I know.
It's been fun. Read up until this point if you must, because that's the only way that you can sort of like close this like initial
chapter.
Arc out. Yeah. Saga. All right.
Okay, my turn. I also have 3 titles, which is coincidental. The first one is one I actually don't own physically, and that's Loveboat Reunion, which is by Abigail Hing Wen. This one is a companion novel to Loveboat Taipei, which I think came out in 2020, I want to say. It might have been 2020, I think. And this focuses on 2 of the side characters from that first book. We have Sophie and Xavier. Both of them, well, they dated for a while, and there was kind of a mess with that, and now they're just friends. They're both pursuing their own futures. Xavier just wants to get out from under his father's thumb, get his trust fund, and just do the thing he loves. Sophie wants to make her own way in the world, wants to succeed with the career that she's chosen for herself. But the world seems out to get them, the world and maybe some members of their family. Eventually, they find themselves in a scenario where they're thrown together, and they end up, bringing together everyone they also hung out with at Loveboat. I was surprised, because I was a little like, oh, I'm excited for this, but I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it. But it was really good. It was just as compelling as the first one, and I really enjoyed the fact that we got to know Xavier and Sophie both a little bit more intimately, and also see a lot of the people we were like excited about from book 1, especially the leads of that book. I really just couldn't put it down, despite the fact that it was also hard to watch both of them struggling. Like, Sophie was struggling to figure out her own path. She was struggling when faced with the opinions of other people who just saw her in one certain way.
Right.
And just really felt very boxed in by that. So watching her struggle to just figure out, like, what is she going to do about that? Is she going to conform, or is she going to just keep fighting to do her own thing? And then you have Xavier, because he struggles with complicated family dynamics, and he also has dyslexia. So he's struggling with that as well throughout the book.
It's not easy.
It was just really compelling to see them both sort of go through this journey, both individually and together. And it was just fun to see everyone reunite, to see how things all played out at the end. Very compelling, very good, and I'm super glad I picked that one up, and I think you guys should too. The first book I read this year was actually a romantic comedy, kind of, and it's Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I love this cover. This is about a TV meteorologist and a sports reporter who are scheming to get their divorced bosses back together in order to sort of make their workplace a little bit more
livable,
conducive to working,
there
and to,
go.
you know, give them room to grow in their careers. Well, at least that's the case for the meteorologist. I was surprised because this book, while it does have a lot of funny moments and it does have a lot of very like rom-com style scenes, it's also very, there's a surprising depth to it, because the main character Ari, she struggles with a lot of emotional and mental things, and just watching her go through that and work through that, and also have this, and also having this like fun sort of rom-com film type plot, it was an interesting combination and one that really worked for me. Like, I really felt for her and I was really invested in seeing her journey through. But not only was I invested in her journey, I obviously quite enjoyed watching the romance blossom between our two main leads. It was just a very fun way to start the year, despite the fact that it also has some very heavy topics in it.
Right.
Would definitely recommend it. This is the second book I have read from this author. I have enjoyed it just as much as the first, so now I'm like excited for anything else she's publishing in this genre. I really think like she's got a handle on taking familiar rom-com tropes and, you know, infusing them into stories that also have surprisingly deep or different angles to them, and characters that the reader is just going to come to love. So that's my opinion on this one.
Sounds
Definitely
good.
check it out. The last book we're going to talk about in this particular section is also one of the most beautiful books I own.
Ah, yes.
The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, which is by Axio. The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea has a pretty simple premise. Mina is the main character, and she comes from a village who they have a tradition to sacrifice a bride to the sea god, I think every year, because so much tragedy and trouble has been brought to their village, and they think that that will appease the sea god. The year that Mina becomes our starring character, she ends up choosing to sacrifice herself in the place of the girl that her brother loves. And she finds herself on this magical adventure where she is trying to look for the sea god, help him out, and hopefully end, you know, this whole tradition once and for all. One of the reasons I picked it up is obviously because I have read Axie's other books and really enjoyed them, but also this was comped to Spirited Away. And if you know anything, Spirited Away is one of my favorite Studio Ghibli films, and honestly, this book captures that vibe perfectly. You are brought to a magical, whimsical place. There's some lore there that you're learning. There's just this main character who, like, is not familiar with the workings of this world, but slowly starts finding her way during her time there. It's just so magical and whimsical and wonderful.
And has a hot dragon.
I mean, I'm not gonna say no to that. It's the perfect blend of all the things I quite enjoy in stories like this, because it feels like a fairy tale. I really enjoyed it. I want Axie to write more books just like this one, or, you know, similar to this one. It was just so good and so heartwarming. It's definitely one of the things I read this year that I look back on and I'm like, yeah, I would read that again.
Yeah.
I would experience that whole thing again. In fact, I could probably see like spin-off stories for some of the characters in this. So many things I want to say about it. Suffice to say, you should just pick up The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea and read it for yourself, and then we can talk about it, because there are some characters that I need to like get out my feelings on, but it would be too spoilery to do so right now. Mina also as a main character, don't get me wrong, is great. I just need to say that for the record, because it sounds like I'm just ignoring her existence. I'm not. She's a great main character. Anyway, The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea is the one to pick up if you're looking for a fantasy book that is a standalone, very whimsical and magical, sort of gives you that fairy tale vibe, so very good.
Awesome.
Alright, I think that's enough books for this first video. We hope you guys enjoyed seeing us talk about these books. If you have any thoughts, comments, feelings about any of the books we mentioned in this video, books or graphic novels we mentioned in this video, leave them down below and we will talk to you soon. Bye!